Hello again. This is JJ from North Carolina's Death Row. I have a true story that I've written that I'm going to tell. It's called Tulpa, T-U-L-P-A. I'll just start right now. When I was a toddler, my family lived in a house. We called it the Little House. It had electricity but no running water and no bathroom. And by calling it a house, I'm being generous. It was actually a wing of the house that my dad and my uncle removed from an old dwelling that no one had lived in for years. And by removed, I mean they stole it. I was around 3 years old at the time, and beg you recall the adults talking about it. Not long after we moved in, I woke in the middle of the night. Not sure what woke me. My eye was drawn to movement in the kitchen. The living room was drenched in darkness, but enough light used to filter in through the kitchen window to allow me to see the outlines of furniture. This night, however, was different. Something was blocking the light, but from the outside. I couldn't tell what it was, only that it was really tall. Just a tall, dark outline, and to my child's mind, it had to be a monster. And such it was. I later learned that not all monsters are found in fairy tales. Knowing this monster should not be there, I went to wake my mom, only to find someone else in her place, a virtual stranger. I vaguely knew who he was, but I had few memories of him. Daddy, I later learned, had recently gotten out of prison. Still, at that time, he was practically unknown to me. I didn't trust him, didn't know him, was instinctively as afraid of him as I was the monster standing outside our kitchen window. Caught between the two, I returned to my bed. The sleep was slow in coming. Not long after that, I had another strange experience. I awoke again at night to find myself outside in the front yard. I had no recollection of opening the front door and walking outside. Indeed, I wasn't walking at all. I was floating. I was roughly 6 feet above the ground in a lotus position, floating in midair. At first, I was scared, and understandably so. I was but 3 years old and knew nothing of out-of-body experiences or OBEs as they are known. Didn't know much of anything at that age. The fear quickly turned to awe. I was not only floating, but flying as well. I could direct my flight, I thought alone. This was no dream nor a figment of a child's imagination. It was real and it was happening. I directed my flight to the backyard. Somehow, I knew how to do this, even as I knew I'd never before had such an experience. And in retrospect, I recognized that this amazing spontaneous event was quite possibly caused by fear. I was instinctively afraid of my dad, justifiably so, as he turned out not to be the protector of our home, but a monster in his own right. And maybe the monster that came to the kitchen window had returned. All I knew is I was flying and I liked it. As I got older, I heard Bigfoot. I childishly thought Bigfoot had been peeping in our kitchen window at night, and I was the only one that had seen him. Later years, I was able to recognize that Bigfoot was none other than my Uncle Clyde. I learned of his deviancy and his depravity, and counted myself lucky he only chose to be a voyeur those nights. I told no one for years of what I'd seen. Shortly thereafter, we acquired a 3-bedroom trailer from Clyde's daughter, our cousin Carol Jean. We lived in it in Clyde's yard while our next stop was being prepared. Not sure how long this was, but I don't recall it being more than a few weeks. The trailer was soon moved roughly 7 miles away to a dead-end dirt road named Nix Road. We only lived there around a year, then our trailer was moved to Hornmill Road, only a mile or so from the little house. We were now permanent residents of Union Mills, North Carolina. In the beginning, me, my younger brother Paul, and my youngest sister Tammy all slept in one bed, what would become the bedroom I and Paul would share. Over time, bunk beds would be brought in. I got the top bunk, Paul got the bottom. Tammy ended up with her own room. My first 3 nights on the top bunk gave me a different view than the one I had from the bed we'd all shared. I now had a window to look out at, but I soon noticed something else. A soot stain above the door in the closet space. I've heard no one say there had been a fire in the trailer prior to our owning it, nor did I see evidence of a fire anywhere else. For some inexplicable reason, this felt ominous. I didn't know why this was, but at the time I just felt uneasy. As soon as we moved in that trailer, Daddy started exhibiting abusive behavior, screaming rampages, violent outbursts, and explosive rages. If he did those things prior to the move, I don't recall it. I was either too young or I blocked it out. Fast forward a bit. I'm now 7 years old, give or take. I've come to fear my dad, and it wasn't that he was constantly abusive, because he wasn't, but the threat was always there. That was almost as bad as actual physical abuse. We never knew when things would go beyond threat and turn into violence. While it was bad for us kids, my mom caught the brunt of it. Whereas I could go to school and for a time escape, Mama didn't have that option. She wasn't allowed to leave. Daddy made her stay, and she had children to take care of. Even back then, at such a young age, I seemed to be able to read people better than others. I had to learn to know how Daddy really reacted to things. And I knew when things were going to get bad just by observing the atmosphere in our home. I had to learn this in order to survive, or I was simply born intuitive. Either way, it was a talent that would serve me well in the years to come. I startled awake one particular night. All was quiet except for the sounds of Daddy snoring. We weren't allowed to close our bedroom doors, so the snores were sort of loud, but I was used to those sounds. I knew those sounds hadn't woke me up. Since I slept with my head toward the window, I looked outside. No rain, no storm. Perfectly clear night. Looking toward my bedroom doorway out in the hall, I saw something. Even as I write this and read it, the memory gives me chills. What I saw was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed before or after. It was humanoid, but I instinctively knew that it was no human. Roughly 3 feet tall, it exuded evil and otherworldliness. Enough light came in through the window behind me that I could see the creature's outline, but no features were discernible, other than the eyes. They were red, the red of embers in a fire that burnt down the dully glowing coals. Whether male or female, I couldn't tell. The impression I got was asexual and malevolent. For clothes, I only saw shadows, with the outline of a cloak and a hood. In retrospect, I'm reminded of a priestly robe, or maybe something similar to what the Grim Reaper is said to wear, minus the sickle, and it was staring right at me. Knowing this was no dream, I was terrified. I pulled the covers over my head, hoping the creature would be gone when I built up the courage to peek out again. Easing the covers from my head, I timidly looked toward the hallway. It was still there, still staring at me. I wanted to cry out, to yell, to scream, but I could make no sound. Then, as if it had gotten its feel of me, it turned and went down the hall. It didn't walk so much as glide, making no sound at all. It slowly made its way toward my parents' bedroom. I wanted to call out, to warn Mom and Dad that it was coming. I didn't. I was too scared. I waited for some sound to be made. Nothing from Tammy's bedroom. Nothing from my parents' room. No sound but the harshness of my breathing and soft sounds of Daddy's snores. Only once more in the years following that demonic encounter, and I had no doubt that the creature was demonic. Without experiencing anything remotely like that, what I saw in that later year could have been a natural occurrence, happenstance, if you will. One Halloween night, maybe 6 years later, my cousin Sean spent the night with us and slept in the bed beside me. Sean said something about some things flying around at night. As soon as he said it, I looked toward our bedroom window, and a bat-like shadow was cast on the curtain. It could have been a leaf blowing in the wind or even a real bat, but the shadow cast by the light of the moon was larger than I could account for. As I think back on that entity I saw, and I wondered about a few things. I wonder why I was allowed or forced to witness its presence. I wonder if that thing, that embodiment of evil, was what caused my dad to be so abusively violent and cruel as he came to be. And I wonder if the creature was actually a demon or a tulpa. From my reading of occult paranormal stories, I've learned that a tulpa is a manifestation of psychic energy given life. If enough hatred, anger, and rage is present in a human being, it can, in rare instances, coalesce into a being of dark energy. This is one explanation for hauntings and malevolent apparitions. Did that evil being possess my dad, or did his anger and rage bring a tulpa into existence? I'll never have a satisfactory answer. I can't ask Dad, as he has died many years ago, nor can I ask Mom, for she too has passed away, and it would have shamed her to speak of this anyway. Maybe our fears and impotent rage created the tulpa, if tulpa it was. There are things in this world that don't seem to be of this world, things that defy belief and explanations. I don't doubt what I experienced. It haunts me still. To this day, I suffer from PTSD. Mostly it's from my dad's treatment of our family, treatment that seemed directed at me specifically, more often than not. Often do I dream of demons, and seldom have I been able to pierce the darkness and get a clear view of those demons. Sometimes my dad is the demon, sometimes not. But they are there, waiting for sleep to overtake me, and frequently I'll wait until the sound of screams, only to realize that I am the one screaming. That is the end.